it take to travel internationally with migraine and 2 young kids? I'm about to tell you. My name is Adrienne Delorco. It's so good to be back with you. I am the creator of Yoga for Migraine, and I have been traveling throughout Brazil for the last 2.5 weeks, visiting my family. My mom is from Brazil, so my entire family tree on my mom's side lives there, and we hadn't been there for 13 years. This was an amazing trip for my 2 kids who had never met our relatives, never visited Brazil, to be there for this family vacation. So this was a huge adventure for us, but it was also a lot for migraine. And I want to share how I managed traveling to 5 different cities in 20 days, visiting 5 sets of relatives, how I managed migraine, how I managed 2 kids. And I'll discuss what I brought in my migraine toolkit to Brazil, how I managed an increase of symptoms. Yes, my symptoms did increase towards the end of the trip, and I'll talk about what that was like and what I did. I'll give you some tips on how to make international travel easier with kids. This was actually my kids' first experience really traveling abroad and doing such a big trip. They're 6 and 11, so it was a great time, I think, for them in their lives to do this. I'll talk about how I manage my expectations living with migraine and traveling, and a few things I would do differently. Some things, if you're got some international trips planned or looking to, some things to watch for when you are making your next trip. So checking in here, let me know if anything's off with our video, or hopefully everyone can hear me well today. I want to shout out to Cephaly. They are a proud sponsor of Yoga for Migraine's free wellness yoga classes and talks like this. Looks like we're having a little issues with the quality. If you are watching live, can you just drop a comment if it's like skipping or being odd in the quality? And if it looks good, let me know that too. I appreciate it. I've been using Cephaly every day since 2015, and it was really the first preventative migraine treatment that I used that actually worked. The best thing, there's no side effects, it's non-pharmacological, and if it doesn't work for you, whether you are using it for prevention or for acute treatment, they have an amazing money back guarantee, and you can send it back and no questions asked. So they are actually having a great back to school sale until August 15th. So if you combine my coupon code with their current sale, you can actually combine coupon codes with them. Thank you, Luba, for letting me know everything looks good. Appreciate it, Jackie. Great to see you. Oh, good. Crystal said she just ordered hers. Yeah, you can stack up coupon codes with Cephaly. So collect them, use mine, Yoga Migraine, and give it a shot. So let's dive in. What I brought in my migraine toolkit to deal with traveling and all the changes that happen. For most of my clients and people I talk to with migraine, travel is up there on the list of things people with migraine want to do. They don't want to be afraid of it. They want to be able to travel and enjoy it. And I absolutely encourage my clients to do that and do it sensibly for however your condition of migraine is. Bring whatever you need to make your trip manageable and also to ease your anxiety about the trip. That's a big part of it. So do travel, but know that you might need accommodations, and it doesn't have to be an all or nothing, you're just at home all the time. I work with people with chronic, severe, debilitating, disabling migraine who I've worked with to get to the point where they've been able to travel abroad again, even if it means they're bringing their ice packs on the plane and all their meds and injections. That doesn't have to mean you have to stay home for the rest of your life. So what I personally brought was my Cephaly device, and I continue to use it every day, first thing in the morning on my trip for prevention. My rescue meds, so for me that's naratriptan, naproxen, and Nurtec. And I'll talk about how when my symptoms increased towards the end of my trip, I did use them more frequently, and I'll kind of give you a little insight into how I did that. Water bottle, obviously going through security, you can't have that filled, but water was a big deal because especially when you go to many third world countries, like tap water is usually not the best source of water. People in Brazil, they all have filtered water filtration systems in their home. So I did not skimp. If I was out and about, I bought water. Like I was on my water constantly. Oh, and thanks, Crystal. I will. I'll talk about using Triptan and Nurtec. Yeah, I will definitely go into the hows of, the rescue medication, but want to emphasize hydration throughout your trip because traveling on airplanes is dehydrating, being in a new place, especially if the climate is different. Do not skimp on water. And one of my favorite things for hydration in Brazil is getting a fresh coconut. They have like stands in many places, and it was like $1 or less than $1 for a huge thick coconut, and it's very hydrating. It's got a ton of electrolytes. I brought my headache hat too. For those of you who don't know, it's a great ice kind of headband thing, and they have different styles. And I did bring it, but because we were moving locations like every 3 or 4 days, I never ended up like being in a place where I could freeze it for long and use it before we ended up moving to another location. But I know for many of my clients, like having they've been able to work out like getting their ice pack or headache hat through security. So that's definitely an option and something I think if I was in one place longer, I probably would have used more. And then just in case, I brought some nausea meds, which thankfully I didn't need on this trip. Some great ginger chews that I got from Retreat Migraine just to have on the airplane. This time around, thankfully, my nausea was not an issue, but I've absolutely had other trips where I've thrown up in the barf bag on the plane. So it's just nice to have these in your carry-on so that it just reduces your anxiety and that you have something when you need it. So let's check in. Okay, so on my trip, as we, I feel like in terms of travel, like what I did was like advanced level circumstances. I definitely wasn't like in the middle of the jungle in Brazil living, in a tent, but there's just so many different levels of travel, and like what I felt we did where we traveled very far away, with 2 kids for 2.5 weeks. It was a pretty long time. And how we moved to 5 different cities within that time, it was a lot. Like that's a lot of change, constant change. And I would add like the family aspect. So this trip for us was not like, we're just on vacation, we're tourists, we're just, at leisure. We definitely had some of those moments, but really for us, this was a family trip where we were going to visit family. And so our own independence of what we did every day wasn't always there. We're kind of working with 2 or 3 or more other people to figure out what was going on each day. So I, as someone with migraine, really had to go with the flow, which is really what I would recommend, especially if you're going, to visit family or going with a group of people. You have to kind of adjust and see how you're doing each day, and that it changes, right? Some days might want to do everything and other days you don't. One day you might want to have a drink and other nights you might not. So with all that said, it totally makes sense that my symptoms did actually well throughout the flight. I know someone asked how my migraine did on the flight. And for me, like pressure changes is not a huge migraine trigger, but I know it is for others. And I've heard of WeatherX earplugs that can be helpful for pressure changes. So I'll, drop that in the chat when I'm all done. So thankfully for me, but I have had symptoms on flights before, and that's the thing. You just kind of never know. We had 2 red eyes for our big trip from the US to Brazil. And the first night I did not sleep at all. The second time when we came home, I was able to sleep a little more. But amazingly, I think my migraine tends to be okay through like the stressful bit. And then it's usually like when you have that time to let down and relax, I usually have more symptoms there. But as the trip wore on and there was just so much irregularity with my routine, I was not eating the same. I was not eating at the same hours. My sleep was sometimes off. Sometimes being in a new place, you wake up in the middle of the night and you can't go back to sleep. You guys know, like all the things that could change, changed. And so what I really did as my symptoms, thankfully the intensity wasn't too bad. My game plan really was to treat super early. Because I didn't want my trip ruined, right, by a migraine attack. And I knew that going into this, if I needed to have more rescue meds than normal for a short period of time, that was okay. I know for a lot of folks, there's a fear of medication overuse, medication adaptation, aka rebound headache, when you take more medications. But talking to neurologists like Dr. Lauren Natboni, who was here, that only really occurs after a long period of like at least 3 months. So I knew going in, it's okay if I need to take more medication than normal, and I did. And so I tried to take my medication really, it's probably even sooner than I would at home, because at home I could kind of like, oh, maybe I'll try yoga, maybe I'll kind of wait it out, I took my meds really early, and I tried to alternate it a little bit. So between Nurtec, Naratriptan's really my best one, but that has the biggest risk of medication overuse. And then naproxen, and then Nurtec, it's kind of hit and miss for me. If I take it as soon as I feel anything, sometimes it can help. So I tried to alternate and just really take care of it as soon as I could. And thankfully, my medication generally does work really well for me. Sometimes I did take a Nurtec and it really didn't help. So then I followed up with a Naratriptan, and that did the job. So there was very thankfully little that I missed out on because of migraine. And thankfully, thank you to my rescue medication, because if I didn't have that and I didn't have something that worked, it would be a different story. And I know for many of you that's the case. There are not medications that help, and that's a different story. So that was really my game plan. Some of you asked, did I keep up my yoga practice throughout my trip? No. So I'm gonna admit it. Just traveling, 2 kids, my husband's in the room. It's just so much harder to have that independence and not wake people up. And I did not bring my yoga mat. But did I not do anything? No. I feel like I'd sprinkle in every day. I did neck stretches. That was for sure. I'd always be stretching my neck. And then days where, we had a little more downtime at home, I would do some more standing yoga stretches, some breathing practices, but it was very light. And so that, I do think also affected my migraine, because for me, yoga is such a calming activity for my nervous system. It's very grounding. And so having less time for yoga increased my symptoms over time. So let me check in with some comments. I'm seeing some great ones. All right, pillows. Yeah, Crystal asked about pillows. And yeah, I definitely went through a lot of variety there. And sometimes I didn't sleep well. I can't say it was the pillow. For me, sometimes I just wake up and I was at my aunt's house and there was roosters, right? And like cats and just things you can't control. So, if you are a light sleeper, having your earplugs, there you go. Earplugs, your little night eye coverings are helpful. There are travel pillows that kind of pack up small. And then a lot of folks, you might see, especially for long flights, they have the neck pillows, but they kind of hook it onto their carry-on. And I could see you doing something similar if like you really want your pillow of just kind of hooking it onto your backpack. Yeah, and Luba mentioned, getting migraine on flights. Yeah, and it can feel really scary to feel like that is possible, and what do you do? And working with other clients who have feared or have had similar experiences, they really just brought all their rescue meds with them on the flight. They informed the flight attendant about their condition and told them, I might be asking for a lot of ice, even bringing sumatriptan injections with them, and having, even for a lot of people with migraine, I know my clients have called for special assistance from the airline. So you have a wheelchair, you have support. You can wear badges that are like sunflower badges for invisible illness conditions to have extra support. So I highly recommend pull out all the stops for what would make you feel secure, especially if you are traveling alone, to get the support you need. Don't be ashamed. We need accommodations living with migraine, and depending on the severity of your disability, some people need more than others, but it doesn't need to stop you from travel. All right, let's check out what else we have in the comments. Okay, I think Crystal, I kind of explained how I use the Triptan and Nurtec. Yeah, and for some folks, Nurtec's like a miracle. Everybody's different. Nurtec for me, if I take it super early and when the pain is not too intense, I have had some success. And if it doesn't, then I still follow up with my Naratriptan, which for me is I always know that one is going to work, thankfully. Yeah, Eileen asked about what kind of water. It depends on where you're traveling. So in Brazil, the tap water is not recommended to drink. It's fine for brushing your teeth or taking a shower. None of us had any stomach issues. All of my relatives had water filters with you. And then for many places in the world, they don't just serve you water for free at restaurants. You usually have to order a bottle of water. So bottled water is definitely the safest bet. And I usually, just refill my own. So I went through a lot of plastic water bottle throwaway ones traveling, but that's what you got to do. Yes, and am I talking about sumatriptan? Yeah, the triptan family has a lot of different kinds of styles and different drugs. So sumatriptan is one of the more common triptans. I tend to do well with Naratriptan. Oh, cool. Kimmy mentioned a hoodie with a blow-up pillow. That's cool. All right. So, yes, and thank you, Kimmy, for sharing. It was really nice for my kids to meet my extended family, to meet cousins their age, to hear Portuguese, to try different foods. That's probably a good segue for me to chat about what it's like traveling with kids internationally for this long. I was really happy that our kids did very well. They exceeded our expectations of just going with the flow and not having major meltdowns. Our kids like their comfort zone, and they did well getting out of their comfort zone. But some things that helped when traveling this long and this frequently, and every 3 or 4 days, we were either taking like 3 or 4 hour car rides or going on an airplane. We did bring them their video games, so they had their little Nintendos. And then like times when they were just in the car where we didn't want them to get car sick or just be on the screen all day. One of the most, one of the things they played with the most was just I brought a little Ziploc bag of Legos. My son loves Legos. And another little Ziploc bag of like little mini Pokemon figures. And my daughter and my son in the back seat, they kind of kept themselves busy, just playing with those for a while, which was great. And we were able to also get these portable like car seat booster things that were really, really lightweight. So that helped. We brought a ton of like activity books, and they didn't use that a lot. Screen time, I'd say, probably was the preferred activity. But we also, we wanted us to just, I felt like our kids also needed that like comfort zone time of just kind of zoning out on their video games and, having something familiar for a bit. Our kids are also very picky eaters, and we did bring a lot of like comfort food, especially for my son. And so we had a huge pack of like microwave mac and cheese and like granola bars. So even for me, I brought a whole thing of tea. And in Brazil, they're not huge tea drinkers. Coffee like is drunk throughout the day. And so at first I was like, yeah, I'm gonna, be the Brazilian way and like drink my little cafezinho. But when my migraine symptoms kind of were not great, I was like, you know what, I should just keep to what I'm used to. And I had my tea and just those little things. It doesn't take up a lot of space, but it can really just help you feel like something's familiar. But our kids did amazingly well with all the travel and new sights and new people and new sounds. So a couple things that I would recommend if you are thinking about traveling abroad is I intentionally planned our trip during a cooler season in Brazil. So when it's summer in the northern hemisphere, it is winter in the southern hemisphere. So we went during our summer, which was Brazil's winter, and that was very intentional. There are actually some days we went to the beach where it was cold and rainy, but for me and my migraine triggers, heat being a big one, I much preferred going when it was cooler. And then I didn't try to be too rigid with my routines and what I eat and I don't eat, and I really kind of like took each day as it comes. The more that I could just go with the flow, reduce my anxiety, and adjust as needed. Sometimes I needed to rest more. And that's a big thing I would recommend is like each day you schedule and plan some downtime, like really just picking one thing to do that day, and then that's it. Like you have one outing, and then the rest of the day you can chill and recoup, take a nap, and adjust as you go. So what I would also recommend if you guys are planning flights, so we had one layover, and both times the flights were late, and we barely made it onto our connection. Our whole family was like high intensity interval training, sprinting, running up the escalator to make it to the next flight. It was stressful. It was kind of, I'll say it was kind of fun and exciting, but super stressful as well. And so whatever you've got scheduled with your connections, especially if it's international, because if we had missed like our midnight flight to Brazil from our connection and couldn't go for another day. I mean, it would have been miserable. The only way we got it was like our second flight was also delayed. So plan on flights nearly always being delayed these days. It's no fun, but it's really the reality. And so have your phone charger with you also at all times. And plan, like, I would say a 4-hour layover between your connections, because if one flight is late, it gives you more of a buffer. Going through customs, like, all that takes time. And then the other piece is trying to always, like, book a flight earlier, so then if something is delayed, there's more likelihood that there's going to be another flight you can catch later that day. If your flight was scheduled and it's the last flight of the day, it's much more likely that you're going to have to be booked up in some hotel overnight, which I have done numerous times now, and you're going to have to get a flight the next day, and it's super stressful. So get your flight early in the day and at least a 4-hour layover, especially if it's international. What we did was, like, it was a family trip, and it was really meaningful. We hadn't been in Brazil for 13 years, so we planned a pretty long trip because it costs a lot of money to go down there. We wanted to see everyone who we could see. We wanted to make the most of it. But 2.5 weeks traveling is a lot. And by the end, I was like, okay, I think I'm ready to go home and get back to my routines. So especially if you haven't traveled abroad in a while or your symptoms are more severe, I think like a week is fine. It's like you don't need to travel abroad longer than that. And every circumstance is different, but I think that the longer you stay out of your routine and traveling and moving, and the more likely like your symptoms are to increase. And that definitely happened for me. So short and sweet, you still get the value of it. But it's kind of better to leave wanting more than be like, okay, I think I'm ready now. And then if you're traveling abroad or anyway, the more that you have independent time to where you get to dictate the schedule and what you want to do, the better, I think, for you and your migraine. When you're trying to coordinate with multiple family members and children, like your own needs, understandably, aren't always first place. And so if you can schedule something where like you're just at one place for a week, you can do yoga in the morning, you can kind of play each day by ear, you don't have to coordinate with a bunch of people. I think that is the way to go for migraine. It's not always possible, but I'd say that is the safest bet. Well, I am checking in on anything else that you all mentioned. And yeah, I hope this was helpful and just give you some real life thoughts and tips and advice on what to do when you're traveling. I know a lot of my clients have had international trips recently or have some coming up. It is possible, and I hope that's the takeaway, that this is something that with proper planning, getting yourself to a place migraine-wise where you are more resilient, and like I said, make it a shorter trip, try to stay in one place, bring some comfort things, whether it's your pillows or your tea that you like. It's okay if you have more symptoms. It's probably likely you're gonna have a migraine attack when you travel. That's okay. That doesn't mean the rest of the trip is canceled out by your migraine symptoms. You're going to remember the good stuff. You're going to remember the memories. But take care of yourself. Bring things that are going to help you feel better. I'm going to check in to see if there's any other questions from the chat that I missed? Okay, yeah, I think I answered Valerie. What did I pack to prepare for migraine emergency? All my rescue meds, my cephaly, ginger. And Carrie, I answered if I did yoga while traveling. I'd say it was pretty minimal, but a little bit, here and there. And I did my stretches and sometimes, breathing and some meditation, but it was definitely less than my normal life. Yeah, and for sleeping, I did bring earplugs in my little eye cover, and I never ended up using it. I probably should have, but it's like earplugs, often aren't very comfortable. But the night that I woke up to the rooster at 3 a.m. and couldn't go back to sleep, probably would have been a good idea. So live and learn. Reach out anytime if you have questions about travel and migraine or cephaly. I'll throw out, we've got I'll be giving a free workshop on how to calm your migraine brain without new meds or diets. That's coming up August 30th. So I'll be sharing more info as that comes, and hope you enjoy your next international or domestic flight or trip, and let me know how it goes. All right, see you next time. Bye-bye.